All right, y'all. Ryan Rich here, and this is another episode of the Ryan Rich and Tony Hickman Show. And this is going to be a redo of the interview that didn't get posted last time. And I'm riding solo with my girl, Miss Joelle May, the Lupus DIVA, currently residing in Atlanta, Georgia. And she's going to, as you all know, we talk about disabilities on the Ryan Rich and Tony Hickman Show, and we talk about all types of disabilities, and we teach everybody that has a disability to thrive and to be able to live a normal life. And Joelle is no exception. So I want you to tell all of our Facebook friends and Instagram people and all of your friends and everybody who that we are both associated with your journey concerning lupus and how did that begin with you. So why don't you break it down for us?
Okay, first of all, lupus is an autoimmune disease, which means my immune system is stronger than it's supposed to be. So if I have a cold or a virus, after it finishes fighting the cold or the virus, it still continues to fight my body.
Right.
So unfortunately, we look fabulous on the outside, but we're deteriorating on the inside. I was actually diagnosed when I was 34, living in New York, got rushed to the Harlem hospital, knew something was going on, had been going back and forth to the doctor for about a year. First, they thought it was lymphoma cancer. Then they were testing me for HIV. They tested me for anything you could possibly think of. And just one day I got really sick, ended up getting rushed to the hospital, almost died. My kidneys failed, body was shutting down, told my parents, you need to get to New York right now, because I'm originally from Pennsylvania. And basically, I was married at the time. I told my husband, I said, call him because I don't think I'm leaving the hospital. And I was pretty much right. My body was shutting down, and if I wouldn't have gone when I went, I would have died. The doctor said I would not have woke up.
Wow.
So yeah, I got very lucky.
So I want to ask you, being a person who was really able to do whatever she wanted before you got sick, like I was born with cerebral palsy, so I really didn't have a choice. And I guess you really didn't have a choice either, but you know, I guess it's a little different for people.
It is. And it's probably the hardest part for people to deal with because first of all, the average time for someone to get diagnosed is anywhere from 2 to 10 years. So most people spend a lot of time sick. And sometimes, like in my situation, I never had what they call flare-ups. I never had a major one. So whenever something happened, it was always, you're working too much, because I always had 2 jobs. I was in New York. I was working 2 jobs. I was partying. I was always active. I was hustling. I was out there moving. And it would, you're doing too much. You need to take a break. And then I would take a break or quit one of my jobs, and I would feel better. And when I ended up in the hospital and they finally figured out what it was, because like literally I was at the Harlem hospital. I checked in there at 9 p.m. At midnight, they were rushing me downtown to Mount Sinai to the trauma hospital. And they had a team of doctors there waiting for me.
Wow.
It was serious. From like around, I probably got there around 2:30 or 12:30, but around 12:30 to about 4 o'clock, 4:30 was when they were like, okay, we think we know what's wrong. We need to take a couple of more tests. Because like literally they were taking blood every 30 minutes. It was one of the craziest experiences of my life. I was delirious. It was a mess. But it changes your whole entire life because you go from this person who's literally 100% to now, like, I was 170 pounds at the time. I went down to 99 pounds. My hair fell out. Could barely walk. I couldn't eat. It changes your whole. I was weak, and what occurs is with lupus, because it affects the whole entire body. Basically, there's systematic, which is your whole entire body, and there's discoid, which just affects the skin. So you have no energy. It causes other issues. I have Raynaud's disease, which is your fingertips and your feet get cold. They turn blue or red.
Mm-hmm.
I have polymyositis, which is weakness of the muscles, but I have it all over my body. At one point, I couldn't raise my hands over my head.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it definitely it changes your world, because you go from being this person who does whatever you want to all of a sudden you're struggling to get out of bed.
Right. And
And
I think that's a thing that I deal with too, because at first glance, I'm quote unquote normal. Uh, you don't really see my cerebral palsy till I walk, and I go so hard sometimes. Like I work crazy hours because I work in radio, um, and it just gets to a point where your body just shuts down and you really can't
right?
do anything. So you have to, rest. Like I did a 12-hour shift, and I'm still feeling it from last night. Like I have to go to sleep, and I haven't been asleep yet. So
Yeah,
I'm like,
unfortunately, I can't work anymore. I've tried to go back to work 3
really?
times.
Wow.
It's about it's around 50 to 60%. It might even be higher of people that have lupus that cannot work because of the fatigue.
Right.
The fatigue, like today, I'm really tired.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it has to do with the weather. Part of it was for the last couple of weeks I've been doing a lot of stuff because I'm trying to have my own business and making sure I'm making money to do that and hustling and all of that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult because I have a certain amount of energy every day, and I have to work within that confines of that energy, or I can make myself sick.
Right. So basically, you have to pace yourself and
Very much so.
yeah.
Very much so. So it makes it kind of hard sometimes, because unfortunately, if you pace yourself, sometimes you can't get done what you have to get done, because sometimes things have to be done. It doesn't matter
Right.
if you're sick or you don't feel well.
Right. 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 So I'm gonna uh, pause us for a second here and tell everybody, man, to follow us on YouTube at uh, my girl Tony Hickman. You can follow her at the Real Tony Hickman, and you can also hit me up on Facebook at Ryan Rich or Ronald Richardson. Either one is fine. And you can also hit Tony up on Instagram at the Real Tony Hickman or the Ryan Rich and Tony Hickman Show, and you can also hit me up on Instagram at Ronald_Richardson_Jr. on Instagram. We're not on Snapchat yet, but we're planning on doing a Snapchat. And like I said, just continue to follow the weekly posts and the weekly videos that we have up, because we're going to be talking about disabilities and all types of other fun stuff. So going back to lupus, as we know, people, they get depressed. And I want to know, from a personal standpoint, when you first got diagnosed, like, what was your initial response?
My initial response, which is kind of funny, is
Mm-hmm.
once they told me what I had,
Mm-hmm.
I actually was like, okay, cool, and I went to sleep.
Really?
Because I was tired. I was just, and at that point, it was really sort of, I just want to know what I have.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're sick, a big part of the situation is actually being diagnosed.
Right.
Because the worst part is being sick and not knowing what the problem is. Even if you don't understand it once they tell it to you, at least it has a name and you can sort of try to figure out what to do. So I literally went to sleep, and my father was a bit upset because he felt like I was giving up, not understanding that at that point I had decided everything was going to be okay. And I just need to go ahead and take a nap. And when I wake up,
You'll deal with it. Yeah.
I'm going to be all right.
Right.
I had already made that decision, but nobody else knew that.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was a little different too, because when I got diagnosed, I had people who came to the hospital to see me who actually had lupus.
Mm-hmm.
So they're coming in, they're talking to me, and these were people I didn't know. They were mothers and aunts and cousins of my ex-husband's friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found out one of his aunts actually had lupus, and she was a nurse, and she was out there doing her thing. So I understood that even though it might change my life, I was still capable of doing something. I just had to figure out what it was. And that's different for everybody. Like, as you can see, I'm always out there doing something. I'm always moving around. I'm just out there. But you can't base what someone else with lupus does on what I do. Because technically, I shouldn't be doing any of this stuff that I'm doing. My doctors don't want me to work. They don't want me to do anything. They would prefer me to just sit my behind down somewhere every day. Unfortunately, I'm not that type of person.
Another part to it is, you even with me dealing with cerebral palsy, spastic diplegia, there's a lot that I should not be doing. But I think you and I have had many conversations on, we said, the hell with it. We gonna keep on going. And we gonna keep on doing what we do.
I don't schedule in time to be sick.
Right.
Because I have stuff to do.
And living in the world of social networking and all these different sites and posting up pictures and this and that and other, the thing that I deal with on a personal level is people kind of get the wrong idea. They may look at me and see I'm doing this with this person, I'm doing that with that person, I'm working here, I'm doing this. And they don't ever really take into account that, something is wrong or that I get tired or whatever the case may be. So I think, that's a issue that most people who deal with disabilities, it doesn't matter what type of disability you have, just overall deal with. People
really I take a lot of naps, and that's the part that people don't seem to understand. You might see me in the morning talking about I'm working and I'm making jewelry, and then 3 hours later, I might be at the gym, but I took an hour nap, or 30 minutes, or I at least laid down, or I relaxed. But I take a lot of naps, a lot of mini naps. And in general, I've learned what I can work through, but I've also learned what I can't work through. And I know that there are times that I have to take the whole entire day and just lay in the bed, which is literally what I did this weekend.
Right.
So it's a lot about pacing yourself. And you and I always talk about the morning stiffness, how it takes ever to get out of the bed. And if you've never experienced that, it's hard to explain that stiffness and fatigue to someone that you're always tired. No matter how much sleep you get, you're going to be tired when you wake up. People who are healthy can't understand that concept.
No, they don't. They don't, because I get that a lot. And it's like, I get, you're too young to be tired. And I'm like, okay, if you had my set of legs, then you would realize, like, that.
Right. It doesn't have anything to do with age.
Right. And, you can explain to people until you blue in the face, but they just won't get it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's just the fact of life that, I guess will never be able to be explained unless you deal with people that have, because I deal with a lot of like-minded people. And when I say like-minded people, I mean, I deal with a couple of friends that have cerebral palsy, the same thing that same type that I have. And, we only understand like what that is. So, but if you didn't have it, you wouldn't understand. So, yeah.
Agreed. That's how I am. I have a couple friends I hang with that have lupus, but I also surround myself with people who respect my illness.
Right.
And that's the important part. I always tell people, like, because I also mentor, and it's very hard for people sometimes to understand, especially with something like lupus. Stress is the worst possible thing that can occur, because that's what makes you sick. It causes the body to overreact. It causes the inflammation that causes you to go into the flare. And a lot of times people don't understand that you have to remove as much stress from your life as you possibly can. Of course, we can't all be stress-free, because that's not how life works. But in general, if you have one job and it stresses you out, and you can still work, you got to find another job.
Right.
If you have family members who are disrespectful to you, or don't acknowledge that you're sick, or that are rude to you, or whatever the case may be, they got to go.
Right.
That includes parents, that includes cousins, that includes boyfriends, that includes husbands, and sometimes that includes your kids. Because people have to understand that you really have to make a decision. Do I want to live or do I want to be sick?
Right.
And if you get sick enough, you will die.
Mm-hmm.
And people, and I've had people who tell me that I'm selfish, and I'm like, I absolutely am. Because if I want to live and do it halfway reasonably, then I have to be selfish, and I can't be worried about what anybody thinks or what anyone is feeling on any given moment. I pick and choose what I want to do with who I want to do it. And
Right.
if you're doing something and I don't feel like doing it, then I'm not going to do it. And if you want to be upset about it, then that's your problem because it's not going to be mine because I'm going to be at home taking a nap like I'm supposed to.
And I have that same mentality too when it comes to dealing with certain people. That's why I surround myself with a very, very small circle.
Yes.
I have a couple friends that, I've been knowing since college, and, we still rock hard to this day. And,
yes, I saw that.
Right. And it's just like, they accept, they, we're not going to talk about that.
Okay, I'm sorry. The picture popped into my head. I'm sorry.
They accept me for me, and they accept everything that comes along with me.
Right.
And even then, when I get out of line, like, we've been knowing each other for so long that, those three guys that you see me in pictures with, they check me and be like, yo, Ryan, look, don't do that. But, being the defiant person that I am and difficult person that I am, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway because I know that y'all going to pick me up and off the ground and do whatever y'all need to do to make sure I get home in one piece. So I do it anyway.
Yeah,
but
that's absolutely how it is sometimes. Like,
right.
I definitely do certain things
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that I know I am going to absolutely pay for it later.
Yeah.
But I really want to do it, so I've accepted the fact that I'm going to be in bed for a day or two, or I'm not going to feel well, or I'm going to have a headache, or whatever, the penalty is
Mm-hmm. Right.
for enjoying myself.
I understand. And that's just the way it is, man. I mean, you can't let a disability or physical ailment or sickness limit you from living life. And I've always taken that approach. I mean, even that as I've gotten older and I've gotten more comfortable within myself, it was one point in time where I didn't go out. And those guys can tell you, shouts out to, my fellas, y'all know who you are. I'm not going to name everybody, but y'all know who you are. But, at one point in time, I didn't really go out, and, they were the ones who were responsible for, like, man, look, we're going to come get you. We going to do what we got to do to make sure you have a good time. And they did that. And it's been on ever since. And
Right. You had to become comfortable with your situation.
Right.
And that comes at a different pace for every person. Like me, I was comfortable right from the beginning. But normally that's not how it is for everyone. It takes them some time to figure out what they can do, what they can't do. For most of us, we have to rebuild our life. Like I said, I work jobs. I can't do those jobs anymore. And so I even worked part-time. And even working part-time, after about a year, I'm just exhausted.
Right.
Absolutely exhausted. And you can't keep working jobs and then quitting jobs and what I'm saying, taking a 3 or 4 month break and then going back to the job. They're not feeling that. They're not having that. So at some point, I just had to figure out what was going to work for me, but still be able to pay my bills. And that's the other issue. A lot of people with lupus and any other chronic illness, when it comes to the hospital bills, when it comes to your medication, when it comes to the doctor, you're putting out a lot of money.
And I'm switch gears for a minute here. We're gonna tie that in together, but that's the next thing that I want to get into: medication and eating healthy. Because Tony and I, on our show, on this show, we talk about eating healthy when it comes to having a disability. As you know, Tony had two strokes and a brain aneurysm. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
she's really, really conscious on eating healthy and being raw vegan. So, you know, how did your eating habits change when you got diagnosed? Or what did you do to cope with the natural aspect of
Already
having pain?
eating pretty healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have to change a lot about my diet, but I will admit that I do like sweets. So I do have to pay attention to my sugar intake because a lot of sugar will cause inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't realize that. And then you'll have people to be like, but I do honey or I do guava or I do whatever. The
Right.
problem with that is once it gets into the body only looks at it as sugar. It doesn't matter where the source came from. The body processes it as a sugar. And even if you do a lot of carbs, you have to be careful with the carbs because again, it ends up being processed. It once it breaks up, it becomes a sugar. Mm-hmm. So I pretty much eat what I want, but I don't do a lot of fast food. I don't do a lot of fried food. I don't cut them out completely because I don't believe in not eating things that you like because life should not be miserable. But at the same time, you shouldn't be eating those things every day anyway.
Right.
If you're being really realistic. So I pretty much eat what I want. I'm very, I pay attention about my portions. I, pay attention with the fast food. Because a lot of people don't even realize, even when you go to a restaurant, it might not be fast food, but it's still not healthy food.
Right, because they cook with all kinds of butter.
Right. And they're not even realizing how many calories they're consuming at a meal. I mean, when you look at calories, most meals you technically should be cutting in half, but most people don't do that.
Right.
So you have to look at all of that. I do a lot of smoothies. I try to do fresh fruit. I don't do vitamins, and people are always surprised when I say that because we're a country that's into the vitamin kick. There are several reasons why I don't do vitamins. Number one, there's no monitoring of vitamins. So you don't even know if you're actually getting what they said is in that vitamin. First and foremost, there's no regulation. So they can be putting anything in there. It could be 90% filler and whatever else it's supposed to be. So to me, you have to be very careful. Also, through talking with my doctors and other nutritionists and other people, most people's bodies do not even digest those vitamins properly for it to even benefit them. Mm-hmm. And thirdly, because I really do pay attention to my diet, I try to get all of my vitamins and nutrients from my food. Because if you eat the way you're supposed to, you don't need extra vitamins unless you have other issues. One of my issues would be I'm not supposed to be in the sun. And notice I said I'm not supposed to be in the sun because I don't always follow that rule.
We know.
It can cost later. That's one of those moments that you know you're going to pay for it later.
Right.
But because I most of the time follow that rule, every once in a while, my doctor has to prescribe vitamin D for me because you get your vitamin D from the sun. So, I definitely have to do that every once in a while. It's been quite some time because living in Georgia, I tend to be able to get a little more sun as long as I'm cautious and I put on my sunscreen and pay attention. But I really focus on the eating well. And when it comes to working out, now I haven't been working out as much as I should be because I'm working on my business, but I'm definitely going to work on getting back in the gym. Mm-hmm. But working out for me was extremely important because, as I said, I have polymyositis, which is muscle weakness. Mm-hmm. And normally when you get it, you'll get it in your arms or you'll get it in your legs or something like that. I had it all over. Mm-hmm. So I really had to get out and become active and move around. And I also ended up having to get both of my hips replaced because I was on prednisone, and prednisone destroyed my bones in my hips. So it was really important to me to rehab so that I can walk and not limp all the time. So now I only limp when I get extremely, extremely tired or I've just absolutely done too much.
And that's the same thing with cerebral palsy too, or cerebral palsy. When I overreact or I get kind of irritated,
Mm-hmm.
it affects me in ways where it affects my nerves. So I start to shake and I start to
Right.
lose my faculties a little bit. So I have to kind of remain calm because my nerves will just get really, really bad.
Right. And then you
Yeah,
can't function and do what you're supposed to do or what you
exactly.
need to do. And
Right.
that's one of the things with lupus that people don't realize because it affects the whole entire body. Like
Mm-hmm.
me, it affected my kidneys. It caused me to have a slight heart murmur, but it affects everything in the body. So you're talking your kidneys. It affected my red blood cells. I've always had a low white blood count, and they couldn't figure out why. So literally, after I get out of the hospital, I had to take shots for my blood, which is not unusual for people that have lupus. But it affects your nerves, your blood. It can affect your brain, you,
Right.
all of your organs in your body. Uh, it tends to be the kidney, but it has caused people issues with their pancreas, their stomach, anything that you can think of.
Mm-hmm.
It can affect it, but it's usually the kidneys and heart are what it affects first for most people.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah, like I told you, I'll park in the handicap, and I always have people looking at
Mm-hmm.
me like I'm crazy because again, I'm walking okay. They don't
Right.
see anything necessarily wrong with me. Like even though, I have bald patches and stuff, I have my hair blonde most of the time. So unless you're really looking at me, you
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily realize that I have bald patches unless you're standing right in front of me. So I always have people looking at me like I'm crazy. So unfortunately, I tend to get out of my car with an attitude.
Really?
And I walk around like I'll cut everybody because
Mm-hmm.
in those situations, you always have somebody who wants to ask you why you're parked there.
Mm-hmm.
And my response is always, don't worry about it. Ain't none of your business.
Right.
And it's unfortunate, but my disease causes me to have to be extremely rude to people sometimes because
Well, let me stop you there. And I think uh, I can speak for you a little bit. I'm not gonna say necessarily rude, but it just causes you to be, because dealing with cerebral palsy, it just causes you to be. I'm gonna say standoffish.
yeah.
Um, yeah, because even with me dealing with cerebral palsy, uh, when I was younger, and even as I've gotten older, uh, people always ask me, "Hey, bro, why do you walk like that?" So I just get to a point where it gets tiresome explaining, you know, what it is that causes me to walk like this. So I just may say something crazy like, "Oh, I got into a motorcycle accident," or "I got into a real bad accident," to kind of negate, you know what I'm saying?
Because
All
sometimes
that.
I just don't feel like being bothered.
Right. So it's just like, yeah, you don't feel like being bothered. So, you just, you do what you can to try to cope. So, and then, you be rude to the people that uh, act like a-holes towards
Yeah, this is
you. Yeah. So, yeah, like rude sometimes, but not all the time. But it is a
because
tiresome thing
I,
because
I've
people don't know.
learned a lot of times to just not
Mm-hmm.
even acknowledge people. Like
Yeah.
they don't exist to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just go and I do whatever I'm doing because if you acknowledge people, they can really work your nerves, which then gets you upset.
Mm-hmm.
And now what I'm saying, you're upset, so therefore your body reacts to that.
Right. All right. So we gonna get a little personal. Not too personal, but personal. I want to know, being that you are a woman that has lupus,
Hmm.
you consider yourself the Lupus Diva. So we're gonna dig a little deep. How has dating been since your diagnosis with lupus, and how have the fellas dealt with that?
Dating is interesting because in general, I don't have problems dating.
Okay.
When it comes to dating, I'm the problem.
Okay.
and it's because having lupus, I have to be very careful about who I have in my space. I can't have the drama. I can't have the person that everything has to be about them. I have to have someone that I need to make sure they're going to be there if something happens. Yeah, I don't want to sit there and be dating someone for 2 or 3 years because I haven't been sick since I was diagnosed in 2001. But it doesn't mean I won't get sick again.
Right.
So I don't want to be dating someone for 2 or 3 years and then all of a sudden I have a major flare and then he just disappears, because that's when you need them the most. But also, my space has always been sacred to me, but my space has become that much more sacred. The energy, the calmness, and I have to make sure that anyone I bring into that space respects it.
Right.
And isn't going to bring any outside negativity that, that isn't the normal negativity that occurs with just everyday living.
And that was the problem that I had ran into too before I started dating the young lady that I'm dating now. It was always something. So, you really had to, or I really had to kind of like really be selective about who I brought into my space. And I mean, even when she came along, shouts out to Maya, who I give so much credit
Her
to.
cute self, I like her.
But yeah, man, she, we talked and talked and talked and talked, and dealing with what I deal with too. I was kind of insecure in the beginning because I was like, okay, well, when things get thick and when things get difficult, like, are you gonna leave? And that wasn't the situation, but you just have a tendency to kind of like have to communicate and do those things so people can do what they have to do for you. But like letting everybody in your space is not a good thing.
Yeah, and my situation was a little different because when I was diagnosed, I was already married.
Right.
And I got diagnosed a year and a half after we got married. But he chose to stay because a lot of times, especially when you're a woman, it's around 60 to 70% of the men leave when a woman gets sick. Because in our culture, the woman takes care of the home. So if you're sick and you can't take care of the home all the time, then a lot of men don't want to deal with you.
Right.
So I didn't get divorced till 2013.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting getting back on the dating scene, newly divorced with lupus. And I was with him for 15 years. So the whole entire dating scene had changed.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, even just getting into the dating scene at first, because I was divorced, I wasn't even trying to get right back into a relationship. I had to figure out me.
What you want to do, right?
Yeah, and where I was going and pay off all the medical bills and, address the joint issues that me and my ex-husband had that needed to be paid off. And, there were just a lot of things. So for like that first 2 years, I went out on a couple of dates and all of that, but I was not serious about dating at all. It was sort of like, I'm gonna go out here and have a little fun and enjoy myself, but I'm not. Like at one point, I was just like, I don't think I'm ever gonna get married again because I have too many issues as far as things need to be comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And just having lupus, anyone who comes into my life definitely has to make some changes to accommodate me. And that's not always fair. Like, people always get upset and they'll tell me, well, you know, he didn't want to date me because I had lupus or he, and my whole thing was, but why are you mad? Why would you want to date someone who isn't comfortable with your disease? They're not going to be an asset to you. And at the end of the day, you have to respect that. Everyone is not built to deal with someone that has a disability. And unfortunately, a lot of people who have disabilities feel that other people have to deal with them. Nobody has to deal with us, just like we don't have to deal with anyone we want to deal with.
We just get caught up in a difficult way because, you know, we automatically think, okay, well, this person should deal with us, or, you know, they should do this. And really, truthfully, they don't have to. Just like they say, you don't have to.
They really don't have to. And that's something that people have to understand. Just like with me having lupus, I make choices to not be around people for whatever reason. They have the same option not to be around me because of, you know, because of my situation. And everyone's not good at taking care of someone. Because at the end of the day, there are days that I need somebody to take care of me.
Yeah. So we're going to pause again and we're going to tell everybody, man, hit us up on YouTube at the Ryan Rich and Tony Hickman Show, Instagram, all of our social networking pages, the real, I messed up, the Ryan Rich and Tony Hickman Show. Hit us up, man. We broadcast every week and we're going to continue to bring new topics and new issues concerning disabilities. And it's not going to only be about disabilities. It's going to be about fun stuff too, outside of disabilities. But disabilities is going to be the main topic that we do talk about in the podcast. And within the next couple of weeks, we got more stuff coming up and we're going to have more fun. So we're going to close this thing out. And I'm going to ask you, what has been the craziest thing that you've had to deal with having lupus while being out with friends and just having a good old time?
Ooh, I fell down the steps.
Oh, what's the craziest thing that you've done?
I fell down the steps. And they tried to stop me from falling, and I took everybody down the steps.
Yeah, that has happened before.
Yeah. I took everybody down with me. Actually, though, my thing is when I'm out and hanging out, if I get tired, I'll go to sleep anywhere. Like as long as I feel comfortable or I feel safe, I will go to sleep. And I remember one of my friends was having a family function at her house. And I had told her, I was like, well, unfortunately, when I get tired, I have to go home because I know you, but I don't know other people when somebody might steal my purse.
Right.
There's just things that you have to think about. But in general, I've been pretty good. Outside of the taking everybody down the steps, I haven't had anything really, really ridiculous because I'm very careful of how much I drink when I'm out.
Right.
And I try not to get too rowdy because I'm a lot older than you. So I have 2 decent hits, so I really have to be careful.
No comment on that.
Because I'm not trying to break my hips. So I'm definitely very careful about when I'm out and what I'm doing.
Yeah, we gonna leave that alone because I've done some things, but we're gonna leave that for another show. So to you, I just want to say that I appreciate you doing the show with me, and tell people where they could contact you at.
They can contact me on Facebook at Joelle May, the Lupus Diva. My jewelry website right now is Joelle's, JOELLES, Jewels, JEWELS, co.com. I'm on Instagram at Joelle's Jewels. I'm also on Twitter at Joelle's Jewels. But yeah, I mentor, I make jewelry. Come check me out.
And you also do, I noticed through talking to you too, that before we get out of here, before we close this thing out, you also do you're also involved with a lupus walk.
Oh yeah, I do the lupus walk every year for the Georgia chapter. I raise money for that. I am one of their community ambassadors. So a couple weeks ago, I did a local TV show. I did a television, did a radio show, and I volunteer at a lot of the stuff that they do will raise money and stuff. So I'm very active in the lupus community.
All right. So hopefully we'll see more to come from you and everything that you got going on.
All right. Thank you for having me.
All right. This has been another episode of the Ryan Rich and Tony Hickman Show. As you can see, I'm rolling solo today because my girl Tony is off doing some other major things. And this is going to be the first segment that I'm doing by myself. So it's kind of weird without my sidekick. And we're going to just keep it going. So thank you. And we'll be in contact with each other. And see you guys next week. Peace.